The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Securing your recycling in a few steps is simple, like bundling your cardboard separately. These bundles can act as a lid for your blue box or placing heavier items such as magazines on top of papers with no material above the rim.
Hello everyone, this is Talk Politics. I'm Deborah Hutchison. Today we're taking the show on the road. On Tuesday, July 28th, Ontario Premier Doug Ford made multiple stops here in Durham region, the first in the morning at the Ajax Pickering site of Lakeridge Health for a major long-term care announcement. Later that afternoon, he stopped here at All or Nothing Brewhouse in Oshawa, where we had the opportunity for an exclusive one-on-one interview.
And this is another great Ontario story about Ontario Spirit. They switched over to hand sanitizer again, jumping in to help us during COVID-19.
Premier, thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Oh, it's great.
Let's start off with the reason you're here today.
Yes.
is the tour of All or Nothing Brewhouse and your reaction to seeing a local company that was able to reinvent itself and keep itself going under very difficult circumstances.
Absolutely. Well, I want to first of all thank Jeff and Eric, the two brothers that started this back in 2014, and I love entrepreneurs. Absolutely love them. Started from absolutely nothing, did so much work in here, employing people, but most importantly, showed the true Ontario spirit. When we were in desperate need of hand sanitizer, they immediately switched over their line. And as Jeff was telling me, Eric's literally slept here every single night to get this up and going. And again, that's the true Ontario spirit. Everyone has pitched in. When I always say Team Ontario, I always talk about the 14.5 million people and the great companies that switched over their lines literally overnight. So we're very, very grateful. And if you're in this area, Oshawa, come by and have a nice cold beer.
Okay, second question. Big day for announcements today,
yes.
Especially here in Durham region in your long-term care announcement. Why was Ajax chosen for the accelerated build pilot?
Well, we want to do right across the province, but there was 3 sites that were really shovel ready. That before the pandemic, before COVID-19, they had plans on putting a long-term care home right there. And I'm a big believer of campuses of care. Rather than stick a long-term care home way out in the, away from the hospital, it'd be great to have it as close to the hospital as possible, and that's what we're doing here in Durham, and we did it in Peel, and we'll do another one in Toronto. But what's amazing about this is when everyone pitches in, all municipalities and the province and labor and the hospitals, something that would take typically 4, 5, 6 years is going to take 7 months. It's unheard of, and it's amazing what can be done when we all cooperate, we collaborate, and work together. So we're going to have a 6-story building, 320 beds, in a little over 7 months. And my question is, if everyone can collaborate on a long-term care, why can't we do that when companies come to Ontario and say, I want to open up? And sometimes they'll take 5, 6 years just to get through the EA side of things, environmental assessment. It's unacceptable. We're competing against the rest of the world. We're competing against our neighbors south of the border. And I can tell you, as a businessman, if we don't give companies the environment to grow and thrive in this province, there's 50 other places south of the border that will do it in a heartbeat, and 12 other places around Canada that will do it in a heartbeat. So we need to cut the red tape, regulations, and get stuff going more than ever now.
Now, the bricks and mortar are one thing. Staffing it adequately is another challenge.
Yes.
How difficult is it going to be to staff our long-term care homes on an ongoing basis?
Well, that's one of the challenges that we're facing. We have a working group that's going to be reporting out over the next few days. We're going to make that public. And I look forward to it. We need to put more money, which we are, $1.75 billion, more than any government in the history of Canada, not just in the province. And we're really going to focus on getting people and asking them, when they go through college, go become a PSW. become a nurse, become someone that can help out in long-term care. It's a challenging job, and I'm so grateful we do have some great people across the province.
Changes do take time.
Yes.
The second wave, we keep hearing about a second wave. What pandemic hasn't had one? There's been talk about it starting as early as September when the kids go back to school, or this winter. How confident are you that our long-term care homes are going to be staffed sufficiently and there's enough protocols in place so that the seniors that remain there aren't going to be the target of COVID?
Yeah, so I'm always concerned, and that's why we have to rely on places like Lake Ridge Health. They were incredible, and that's the reason we had to pass Bill 195 to have the flexibility to move staff from the hospital into long-term care, because without them, we'd be in trouble. We really would. The frontline healthcare workers have been amazing. They're absolute heroes, and we really need that flexibility to support them. But in the long term, we need people in there full-time, not part-time bouncing from place to place. That was happening in the past. We need people full-time in these long-term care homes, and I think with a funding of $1.75 billion, we'll be able to do that.
Okay, one more question. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
You have a lot of pressure and a lot on your shoulders.
Well, I appreciate that, but I have the best team in the world, and the team, again, is the people of Ontario. I play the smallest part in this. Everyone else pitching in, people like Jeff and Eric that didn't need to be told, didn't have, get the phone call and say, can you do it? When we made a call, 23,000 companies stepped up, switched over their lines, and it's just unbelievable. There's nothing we can't do. There's no one we can't compete against anywhere in the world. We have the greatest jurisdiction in the world, and I always say we support each other. Buy made in Ontario, made in Canada products, and we need to stick together like we've never stuck together before. When
you became Premier, did you ever imagine that you'd be going through this?
I never in a million years. I don't think any of us were, but again, I'm so impressed about how people, I always compare it, I'm a big history buff, and I watch these World War II shows and everything, and how people retooled. And when the men went to war, everyone, all the women, the moms, everyone jumped into production lines, and they were making airplanes, tanks, cars. And without that production line moving, you don't know the results of World War II. It could have been a different way, but that's what we did. Everyone jumped in there, everyone rolled up their sleeves and really pitched in, and we're a great leader in the world. I was watching CNN the other day, using Ontario as an example. When you have 14.5 million people, an economic powerhouse that we are in North America, and we're seeing 111 cases today, 119 the other day, it's pretty amazing. And and out of those, I think 60% came from two regions. So we're doing good, but we can never let our guard down, never take our eye off the ball for a second. We have to be vigilant continuously, because we all know the second wave is coming. Are we prepared? We're 100 times better prepared as a province, as a people, to deal with the second wave as we were when the first wave hit us.
Okay, thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Stay with us when we return. Durham MPP Lindsey Park joins us.
Securing your recycling in a few steps is simple, like crushing your cans and bottles down in your container's blue box and your box board down in your papers box. This saves a lot of space and reduces the possibility of material blowing out of your blue box on windy days.
It's about sharing and caring. It's about doing and belonging. It's about living life to its fullest. And it's about laughing out loud. We are L'Arche Canada, and we're about witnessing and sharing the gifts of all people. Learn more about us today.
As a Senior Support Coordinator at Durham Regional Police, I have the privilege of working with seniors and the organizations that serve them. Join me, Sergeant Deborah Anderton, along with Constable Daryl Rice on Seniors Talk, as we put the spotlight on the issues that matter most to seniors and their families. Safety, wellness, and family responsibilities are just some of the challenges that we'll tackle on Seniors Talk, only on Rogers TV.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Van Bilsen for Photos and Travel, where we bring the world to your doorstep. Join us on August 2nd at 1 p.m. when we visit beautiful Venice and cultural Florence, right here on Rogers TV.
And welcome back to Talk Politics. We have moved back into the studio. Joining me now is Durham MPP Lindsey Park. Lindsey, it's been a busy couple of days. We are taping this on Thursday, July 30th. Last time I saw you, it was Tuesday, July 28th, and you were with the Premier.
Yeah, it's been great to have the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, in Durham this week. He's been working tirelessly through what's been a difficult time for so many in our community. And so it was great to have him in Durham to really thank some of the local businesses that really contributed to the fight against COVID-19 over the last number of months, but also to listen to the concerns of our constituents. So many decisions are being made at the federal level, provincial level, really all levels of government right now. And so more than ever, we're interested in hearing from our community on what they'd like to see us do, what they like, what they don't like about how we've been handling it so far. There's no question when you're moving this quickly, you're not going to be perfect. So we sometimes have to course adjust as we go. But we held a telephone town hall on Tuesday night with constituents dialing in and asking questions and sharing their concerns. So I know the Premier really appreciated that, as did I, as the member for Durham, which is the east end of Durham region.
Okay, so when we saw you on Tuesday, no decision had been made on back to school. We're talking to you today, Thursday, and yeah, your plan has been released. Let's go over some of the details. Very different compared, depending upon the age of the child and whether it's elementary or high school.
Yeah, so just hours ago, we had the Premier back in Durham region and the Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, to announce the plan for reopening schools in September. And Deborah, I'm really pleased with the announcement. I've heard personally, locally in Durham over the last number of months that people wanted predictability. Parents wanted predictability come September and really wanted, assuming it could be done in a safe way, kids to be back in the classroom 5 days a week. So we see a plan that was laid out today, slightly different for young elementary kids than high school kids, naturally, but masking mandatory for grades 4 to 12 in the classroom, as well as distancing measures. Additional nurses being hired, 500 nurses across the province to be able to respond, as needs escalate in a certain community, kind of like a SWAT team, to be able to go to the community that really needs it. Screening being done not only by parents in collaboration with the school board and the schools, but also then nurses can come to communities when it's needed to provide that additional support.
Can I ask why no masks for children in grade 3 and under? I mean, I can understand in JK, but I have, read some criticism here that the kids in grade 3 and even kids in grade 2, they're now used to wearing a mask when they're out with parents. They're old enough.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to highlight that it's still optional. So if parents think their child is mature enough to wear a mask to school, they absolutely can do that, and the child can wear the mask all day long. We had Dr. Barbara Yaffe speaking at the press conference today, highlighting what public health perspective was on this. Of course, we've been following their advice throughout the pandemic, and she really highlighted concerns with some kids just don't have that maturity, or depending on their motor development, the ability to take masks on and off without assistance. And so it was decided by public health not to make it mandatory, but to make it optional for kindergarten to grade 3.
Now, for the elementary kids who will be going 5 days a week, some schools are so jam-packed. Is it not going to be impossible to maintain that social distancing?
Well, I think that's why there's a number of measures in place. It's not only social distancing, it's for the older grades, masking policy, but also screening. And I really do want to give a shout out to parents that have been so exceptional during this time, really trying to do what's best for their children. We really are going to be relying on partly parents, like they have for decades, to really be honest with the school about when their child is developing symptoms or they're sick. And we'd ask if a child's developing symptoms for them to stay home. That's very important. And this is not a new COVID policy. I mean, anytime a child's sick in school, it's always best that they're kept at home. I think the difference now is if a child is at home, there will be online learning with teachers active and available every day. And we've really tried to create options for parents. Some parents are going to be comfortable sending their kids back in September, and others may hold off for a bit, and that's okay. And that's really why we're making sure not only is that in class, in person learning going to take place, but also synchronous online learning at home will continue to be available in the fall.
Now, I also have to ask you, as you mentioned, the situation changes on a dime. Nothing stays the same here, and often you've had to pivot and you've had to adjust. A lot of people, most people, once the kids go back to school, they will be holding their breath and crossing their fingers that our numbers don't go back up. If those numbers start to go back up, how prepared are we to go back to online learning and to pull the kids out of school?
Well, I think that was a great way to put it, Deborah, holding your breath and crossing your fingers. I think we've all been doing that throughout this pandemic, and thankfully in Durham region, but across the province, we're seeing the number of cases continue on the decline. It looks like we've been successful in flattening the curve, but it's not over. And Dr. Yaffe was saying that today, COVID-19 is not over. And so we need to continue to be diligent. And if there comes a point at which public health determines additional safety measures are needed for students to keep the classroom safe, to keep not only the students, but the teachers and educators safe, then we'll take that advice.
Okay, let's move on to long-term care. Big announcement for Durham. A new long-term care facility will be built in Ajax next to the Ajax Pickering Hospital site of Lakeridge Health. How confident are you? And the announcement was it's going to be fast-tracked, going to be done by 2021. How confident are you that we can achieve that?
Yeah, well, as you see in any construction project, nothing's a guarantee, but right now they're aiming to get the project done in under a year, which frankly is unheard of. I think if we can get that done, that's a great precedent to set in the province, and not only for healthcare projects, but new businesses that are coming to our community, ready to set up shop, ready to create jobs, accelerating the planning process for businesses that are going to create jobs in our community. I think we need to set those precedents during this time. If not now, when are you going to ever do it? We know we need that. We know we need long-term care homes. We know we need job creation to recover from this pandemic. So I'm really pleased that this plan for a few accelerated builds have been announced across the province, and really pleased that one of them's here in Durham region on the site of the Ajax Pickering Hospital. It'll create a campus of care right there at Ajax Pickering, co-locating a long-term care home right next to the hospital. And that really enables the hospital to provide support, right away when that extra assistance is needed in long-term care homes, as we saw in some long-term care homes during the pandemic.
I also want to ask you about the Independent Commission on Long-Term Care during COVID-19. That was another big announcement this week. What is the difference between an independent commission and a full public inquiry? The NDP have been calling for a full public inquiry and say an independent commission is just not good enough. What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I've kind of been watching the different viewpoints expressed on both sides. There was actually the head of the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, of course, of which we have a local Durham, Northumberland chapter, who actually went out and said she doesn't support a commission because it will be too slow. Well, what we know about public inquiries, while there may be, more public meetings and aspects of it which are longer and allow for more questioning, public inquiries take years and much longer than a commission. So if on the one side, the Registered Nurses Association is saying a commission's going to take too long, and on the other side, you have people saying they want that even longer process than a commission. So I think we've found the right balance. The commission still enables public meetings if the commission decides to do that. And also will have a public report at the end with public recommendations. And I think what's very important about it is that timeline. We will have those recommendations by spring of 2021. And we know, especially with, speculation about a second wave, we need recommendations sooner rather than later. And I also, Deborah, want to highlight waiting on those recommendations from the commission will not stop us from acting in the meantime. We've had a number of commissions and inquiries into the long-term care sector over the last number of years with recommendations that were just never acted on by the previous government. And so we're continuing to work to address the urgent needs. One of them was announcing last week a modified funding formula for building new long-term care beds. I think it's between 2011 and 2018, only a little over 600 beds were built, actually physically built, across the whole province. That's just unacceptable. We know we have a growing seniors population province-wide, but here in the Durham region, we could use that many beds right here in Durham. About half that are being planned to be built in my riding, the area I represent in East Durham alone. And it's not enough to announce the beds. We actually need to get them built. And what we've been seeing, it's not a partisan issue per se. Governments of all stripes have been announcing beds for years that never get built. And there was a problem with the funding formula. Sometimes it was the cost of getting land, the development charges. So we've tried to adjust things to make sure that builders and developers have that upfront funding they need to make it economical and actually get the homes built.
Well, and as we mentioned with the Premier, once that the facility is built, adequately staffing so that the residents are well cared for.
And that's a really important point, Deborah. It's one of the, if I could pick two things I hear the most, two criticisms I hear the most about the long-term care sector. One is that, we need more beds built. We're nowhere near what we need. And by the way, Durham has the longest wait times in the province for a long-term care bed. That needs to change. And this is part of that. But the other criticism I hear is there's not a sustainable plan for staffing in the sector. You see lots of turnover. You see lots of part-time contracts with multiple homes. And so we need to see a bit more stability in the staffing of the sector if we're going to protect our most vulnerable, if we're going to provide the care they need. And seniors deserve that. Seniors have given their whole lives building up our community, we're seen as one of the greatest countries in the world to live, work, and play. And that's because of the generations that have gone before us. And they deserve to be taken care of, as they reach retirement.
We're rapidly running out of time, so I want to get to a couple of things here. First, the municipal funding, the, municipalities, raising the red flag saying, you know what, we're going to need help to recover from COVID-19, and recently an announcement of federal and provincial dollars.
Yeah, I'm really pleased that our premier was really pushing the federal government to come up with monies to support our municipalities. And of course, this isn't one level of government, it's a partnership. So it's a $4 billion investment, joint federal and provincial, that was announced last week. That'll be split between municipalities across the province, 444 of them. And those allocations will be announced in the coming weeks. But that's a $2.2 billion provincial contribution and $1.8 billion federal contribution. I know Tuesday, John Henry, the regional chair, was at the announcement, and I know it's a big relief. He said this, right? It's a big relief to municipalities to know that support's coming. Many of them had unexpected expenses to fight COVID-19 and are running, they have projected deficits, shortfalls from it. So this will really help cover those shortfalls.
Okay. We're almost out of time, but I have to ask you, the Conservative Party of Canada will be choosing a new leader in a very short time. You are backing Aaron O'Toole. Why is Aaron O'Toole your guy?
Well, shout out, since I'm on Rogers, Durham, he's a local boy, born and raised in Bowmanville, but I've got to know Aaron over the last few years more closely. Obviously, we share the same area. I represent the Durham riding provincially. He represents it federally. He's been wonderful to collaborate with, and I would say I've just found him to be on every issue you face. Competent, a strong advocate. He also has private sector experience before getting elected, and that shows on every issue he deals with. And of course, really a spirit of service he has that is so needed at that time. He served in the military, a great understanding of veterans issues and international affairs. I think he's been the foreign affairs critic federally and done exceptional in highlighting some of the issues even during this pandemic around China and the need to certainly not rely on any other country when it comes to these emergency situations. And the more we can start to, locally create jobs in manufacturing, so some of these emergency supplies are being produced right here in Ontario. I think he's highlighted the important issues, and I think we would be so honored to have him serving our country as Prime Minister. On that, I'm going to have to stop you. We're almost out of time, Lindsey. Thanks again for joining us, and to our viewers, thanks to you. Until next time, I'm Deborah Hutchison. Stay safe, everyone.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Our ancestors came here from France to build a better life. We lived here happily for generations, until the British decided they wanted our land. The men were called to a meeting and then imprisoned. They demanded we swear an oath to their king and took everything, regardless. We were forced from Acadie, the only home we knew. Mon Acadie n'existera plus.
From 1755 to 1763, over 10,000 Acadians were ripped from their homeland. Despite this, Acadian culture endures in Atlantic Canada.